Hey guys, what's up? I'm Dylan and I'm here today with Jarrod. I'm super excited to be talking about tactical running. Tactical running is a martial art. It's a unique martial art about evading. Actually, we'll let him explain it. What is tactical running? Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, it's really interesting because when you say, tactical running or like a new martial art that's being created, there's a lot of people who sort of claim they've created some new martial art. And the thing with martial arts is like it's been refined over thousands of years. And we're sort of at a point now, or at least a lot of people think that like we're at the sort of point of diminishing returns, that anything else past this point, past let's just say like wrestling and BJJ and kickboxing and Muay Thai and all of these different martial arts styles, any improvements made to the technical side are going to be very marginal, or if at all. So anyone who generally creates a martial arts system or style in this day and age is usually adopting things from other martial arts styles. People who create things completely new end up creating martial arts styles that don't actually, they're not effective, basically. Like I've seen a whole lot of videos of dudes like, slapping around and all of this stuff, spinning, and like it's serious nonsense. I'll send you a couple of videos, it's actually really funny. The thing with tactical running, why it's different, is because it's based on escaping. It's based on running away. And that's something that's been massively overlooked in martial arts and self-defense. But a lot of people aren't aware of that because they have nothing to compare it
to. So what inspired you to create this martial art? Did you have a particular experience that really provoked the need to create it, or did it just come up? Did you just decide to create it while thinking about it?
So originally I was looking for gaps in martial arts. I was like, what's missing and how could I improve martial arts altogether? And the first thing I came up with was a system, or what I call diverse defense, which was actually that martial arts was about learning how to defend yourself from people. But people aren't the biggest source of danger, or there's a lot of other dangers that we face as humans that it would be good to learn how to defend yourself from as well. So I looked at things like, like drowning or burning in fires, even dog attacks, if we're attacked by a dog or something. And I looked at, talk to firefighters, right? Now, if I wake up in a burning house, I don't have any firefighting equipment, but I thought, well, if a firefighter woke up in a burning house, even though he wouldn't have all his equipment, surely he would deal with that much better than me, even though he didn't have any of his equipment or anything. There's a couple like me, like he can't apply everything he knows because he doesn't have his equipment and his team and everything, but surely there's 20% of stuff that he would know that would be useful for everyone else to know in terms of how to escape a fire. And I thought, how can I package this and put this into a self-defense system where people are capable of defending themselves from a wider range of contexts that are more relevant. Now, along that journey, I realized that there was a massive gap in terms of running away. And so I ended up putting everything else to the side and just focusing on that. And I thought, well, I could create a martial art here that is much more holistic, that has fighting and running aspects in it. And the thing that came to mind for me here was I saw martial arts systems, self-defense systems, teaching people how to fight, how to punch, how to kick, how to wrestle, grab, even escape things, right? Even escape certain locks, or if you're caught in a choke or a headlock, how to escape that. But there was nothing for actually running, right? Like actually running away. So you see these syllabuses with a range of different techniques that people learn, practice, and train, and they repeat those. There was nothing like that for fighting, for running, right? Nothing like that at all. And so I thought, well, what would that look like? What would a full system around running away look like? And the first obstacle that came to mind was running away is simple, and it will just be a little couple of tips here and there. And so the second thing I did from that was, well, what are some of the obstacles people come up against when they're actually running or escaping? And it was at that point where I started to notice there was a lot of content that could be added to this to flesh it out into its own self-defense system.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So what are some like techniques that you would like teach or do in tactical running? Cool. How's this different from just running away?
Right, that's brilliant. It's a brilliant question. So there's the strategic side, which makes up, or the tactical side, we should say, which makes up most of tactical running, and then there's the techniques. So with fighting, there's generally, you could say there's three layers. There's strategy, and then there's tactics, and then there's techniques. So your strategies will be things like, I want to knock out this person. I want to beat this person up. I want to break their arm. It could also be, I want to escape. Right? It's kind of like the strategic high level. Tactics are sort of how you go about achieving that strategy. Right. So I want to use kicking, like, or I want to punch them to knock them out rather than kick them, and I'm going to use my legs to set that up, or I'm going to take them to the ground first and then maybe break their arm, or I'm going to take them to the ground and then knock them out from there. Like, so there's different ways in which you can get to that end result. And then the technique is how you actually physically do it. So actual techniques like jab, cross, there's your basic, hook, uppercut, whatever it is. Now, when it comes to tactical running, so how it's different to running away is the strategy is much different to what people would normally do. So usually when we think of running away, a lot of self-defense or martial arts instructors might say, well, we already teach running away. I'm saying, no, you don't. What you teach is you teach escaping a headlock, and then they say to run away. But it ends there. It always ends there. Like any martial arts you go to, it ends there. There's no like, what if this person pursues you, right? So the problem with running away is that it's very random. It matters where you run to, right? So you could run into a dead end where there's no, now you have to fight. Or you could run into like an isolated area where there's no one to intervene. Or you could end up running into a cop or a security guard or something, and just by luck, have the right situation come about, but it's through luck. And so I notice here that where you run towards is so much more important than what you run away from, that the distinction has to be made between running away from an attacker and running towards an advantage, right? Even though when you're running towards an advantage, you are also by default running away from an attacker, the focus is on where you're running rather than what you're running away from. And tactical running is about being able to recognize these advantages and run towards them and actually get to them. And the techniques that we teach are about how to do that. So as an example, I know that I don't have the level, like I've been doing martial arts for I think a little over 10 years now, and sort of training in that on and off a couple of times. And I obviously had that period where I was doing a lot of research on tactical running. So obviously wrote a bit of a book on it. There's my face there, good option, good cover there. So I know that I don't have, even with that experience, like the ability to create techniques from scratch. So one of the obstacles was, what if there's an attacker in front of you, and what do you do? How do you get around them? And I thought, well, what's a sport where the players are trying to stop the other players from getting past them? I thought, well, rugby, gridiron. So what are the techniques they use? Is sidestepping and breaking lines of defense. And so I thought, well, I can take these techniques that they train in there, and I can build them into tactical running. So one of the tactics of tactical running is what we call line breaking, which is about, you're in a running position, someone's in front of you, how do you get around them whilst maintaining a running position so you're not stopping? And there's certain techniques around that. There's also a couple of other techniques in terms of how to use, items to use as weapons. So there's things like, well, it's a good idea if you can to find something you can use to defend yourself with. But often when you're fighting, and this is something a lot of martial artists say, when you're fighting, you're unlikely to find it just conveniently an item laying around. And so it's important to be able to use your hands as well, just to use your fists and learn how to fight on your own. However, when you're running, you're covering more distance. And so you're much more likely to, on your way and through your escape, encounter something that you can use to defend yourself. And you're also more likely to have that range where you can actually access it and pick it up as well. So that, there's a couple of different techniques like that.
That's really interesting. So how does somebody go about training in tactical running if they wanted to learn more?
Well, I think the one tip that I would give everyone, if this podcast is as far as they're going to go, what I would say is, look, there's three things that you want to try and get towards. The first one is safe building, right? A building that you can access that your attackers can't, or capable people, right? People who are capable of actually dealing with the situation for you. It could be cops, it could be anything from cops to a SWAT team, right through to maybe just your mum or your dad or whoever, right, is capable of actually. It just depends on the severity of the attack and who's attacking and everything. So capable people, and also means of transport, where they just don't stand a chance chasing you on foot anymore, because you could have a bike or a car or just something, a train, something just significantly faster that you're gone. So those are the three things you want to try and get to. If you can, we like to make the distinction between getting to safety and losing pursuers, because you can lose pursuers and not necessarily be safe. You could get around a couple of corners on the street and lose them but not be safe, right? So losing attackers is defined as they can get to you but they don't know where you are, and safety is defined as, well, they know where you are but they can't get to you. And trying to achieve both of those can be quite difficult, but you only need to get one to solve your more urgent situation. So how do you get to those? How do you find those three things? Because there's also a lot of other stuff you want to do. You want to make sure you don't run into any dead ends. What if you're in an unfamiliar city, right? There's all of this stuff that comes to mind. Now, the easiest thing to do is to simply run back the same way you came. And we call that route A. It's the first thing you should always do. If you're in a situation where you're attacked, you should simply run back the exact same way you came. Because you came that way, you're not likely to run any dead ends along that way. It likely leads back somewhere safe, like a hotel, your car, whatever it is. It likely leads back somewhere safe, and you're likely to see certain advantages or recall certain things along the way. Like you might have noticed a brick when you were walking, and then now that there's this situation where someone's attacking you, you now know that you're on your way back, you run past that brick if it's safe to do so, or if you have to, you can pick that up and you can continue to run with it, so that if they do catch you, you've got something to defend yourself with. So it puts a whole lot of stuff on autopilot when you simply run back the same way you came. Now, if people are looking to get more into it, more into the training, then we do have So I train the trainers and I market for them and everything. And then they have their own self-defense schools where they not only teach tactical running, but they teach the fighting aspect as well. So one decision I had to make really early on was, do I make a martial arts system that's kind of more complete, more encompasses more things like fighting and running together, or do I just focus on running away? And because there was just so little on running away, I thought, well, I'll focus on that, and other people who learn it can use that as an add-on to their martial arts self-defense systems. So I hardly cover fighting and tactical running.
Right. Interesting. And so like, let's say you are running away from an attacker. What are some things people do quite poorly when evading an attack?
Yeah, the biggest one I see, and I think it's because of movies, they try and slow their attacker down, and there's just nothing you can do to do that. And I know I've seen Bear Grylls has a video of this, where he even runs into dangerous situations to try and deter the attackers. And he's running through like a construction site or something, and he's like, if they slip just once, they could sprain their ankle, and then I would be away.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but you're going through that as well. You could just as easily.
You could do that as well. Yeah.
Now, the biggest thing you'll see of people who get stabbed and die and or get beat up, that just in a really bad situation, is they're usually caught up in a situation that's very complicated. Halfway over a fence, they're stuck in a bush, they're between two tables, chairs, and so they get caught up in these really complicated situations. So you want to keep your environment simple all the time. So like, don't, you might have this you might feel this need to go hide in a bush or something, but you just don't want to get caught up there. You want to have a nice open space around you and keep your situation really simple. You don't want to go into these complicated areas. And also just remember, there's nothing you can do to slow your attacker down. Like if you stop to, you see this in movies all the time, they'll throw like the stall with all
the fruit, yeah. The classic, yeah.
Yeah, and the time that it takes you to actually turn around and throw a trolley on the ground, it could take you 5-6 seconds. And if they're that far away that they haven't caught you in 5 or 6 seconds, they're going to be far enough away in order to see the trolley and simply run around it when they get to it.
Yeah.
You lose time whenever you try to slow them down. Just focus on keeping yourself going as fast as possible. And if they're faster than you, they'll catch up to you. And if they're slower than you, or they're drunk, or they give up, then you're away.
Yeah, that's so true. You always see in the movies, even in James Bond, he's running through the construction site, throwing things, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And in the movies, it works, even in the action scenes somehow. But believe it or not, I guess it doesn't work in real life, which is quite a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. I think parkour is very big on that, but I know that it's not intended to be used for self-defense, and especially not by the average, everyday person.
Right.
I would say to parkour people as well. One, you're often checking, doing a lot of safety checks on your routines that you go through. When you're running away, you're not always going to have that, first of all, unless, sure, if someone attacks you in your city, I guess, and you know the environment and you can do your parkour, that's great. But if you can, leap over a fence like that and the other person can't, you can probably beat them in a straight line anyway. So just do a 100-meter sprint. And the person will lose motivation to chase you. And it's a much safer way of actually getting away from someone too.
For sure. So speaking of parkour, do you incorporate any elements of parkour or train in parkour as part of tactical running?
There is one technique that made it through.
Right.
Because this was one of the biggest tests for me in terms of putting together a system, because I was aware that a lot of people might one day be using this to save their life. So I felt very, I was much more like, there's some other things I've done. I was much more critical and really trying to eliminate anything I believe wouldn't work, because I didn't want to have someone apply or try and apply the stuff and then have them get beat up or even die as a result of trying to do something that I was teaching. So that's you really want to. So there was one technique that made it through, which was a body. When I talked to this parkour coach, he taught me this specific technique for how to get over fences, and this here was actually as a last resort, in case you do need to do it. But we say, you don't seek. This is not something you seek out. It's similar to line breaking. How I was saying, if you've got someone in front of you, how do you sidestep? How do you sidestep correctly in a self-defense scenario? So it was with the rugby. Made some adjustments to those techniques, because rugby players, you're not allowed to punch them in the face. So they don't often have their hands up when they're sidestepping. When we're sidestepping, we need to shell up. We need to go right and fend the faces and everything. So that getting over the fences is a lot like that, where you're not going to seek out sidestepping. You're going to do it if you have to do it. So it's very similar with that, right? So there's some things you want to seek out, and there's some things that you only do it to overcome an issue, right? So things that you might seek out is like corners. Corners are very useful, because like the basics of losing pursuers is to try and get around 3 corners before your attacker gets around 1, because now they don't know where you are, and you turn a chase into a search, which allows you to then get away further. So you want to seek that out at the time. You don't want to seek out jumping over a fence, or you don't want to seek out line breaking. You want to avoid those as much as possible. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We do parkour stuff, simple parkour stuff in there. It's stuff that the 40-year-old mum can do as well,
Oh, cool. Yeah. We need the 40-year-old mum to be jumping fences. So yeah, I'm glad you kept that in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I really didn't want us to be something that was only for athletic people, or only for people who consider themselves to be fast runners. There's even techniques in there for, in terms of fighting, like making your attacker slower than you, right? So there is some fighting stuff, but we call them facilitating strikes. How do you fight your attacker in a way that makes running easier? And so what are some of the strikes you can do, such as kicks to the knee, if you're jabbing the nose, eyes can water, it can make it hard to pursue. Any attack to the eyes or the legs is going to be best for setting you up to run away.
Absolutely. Those are some amazing tips, Jarrod. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you coming today.